5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
offtheropes.com.
Hi, and thanks for joining me for the Off the Ropes podcast. I'm Victoria, and I'll be presenting a weekly show bringing you some of the world's most inspiring individuals, but not just those who have achieved enormous success, specifically those who have endured hardship and adversity and overcame their challenges. Plus, I'll be speaking with experts in the field of nutrition, health, fitness, and personal development to extract their wisdom on how to optimize your performance, fulfill your potential, and learn how to get your life off the ropes. Could you climb 7 of the world's highest mountains? Walk to the North Pole and South Pole unsupported? Could you tackle such challenges without a leg, arm, or optimal vision? Martin Hewitt, a former commissioned officer with the Parachute Regiment, shares his story of resilience and endurance on the Off the Ropes podcast. Following injury during his service in Afghanistan and his subsequent medical discharge, Martin founded the Adaptive Grand Slam, a series of extreme and record-breaking endeavours specifically for disabled ex-service personnel and civilians, inspiring and enabling those with disabilities to lead a life without limitation. Let's meet the man who is leading teams of disabled explorers into the record books via 7 of the world's tallest mountains and both poles. Good morning, Martin. I'm incredibly excited to speak with you today as your spectacularly impressive endeavour to summit 7 of the world's highest mountains, plus the North Pole and the South Pole alongside fellow disabled adventurers, is awe-inspiring. You couldn't be more off the ropes if you tried. How did you dream up the challenge of the Adaptive Grand Slam?
Well, I'd always read a lot about adventure when I was younger. My favourite book was Endurance by Alfred Lansing, which is about Shackleton. Endurance was the name of his ship.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always had a thirst for it. And before I joined the army even, I was in the reserves and in the cadets before that. And I attained a number of adventurous training qualifications whilst I was in the reserves at university, and really balanced academia with I was a dinghy sailing instructor, a kayaker. I was a mountaineering instructor, a skiing instructor. So I'd always had a passion for challenges in the outdoor. And
how did you go from that to actually dreaming up the Adaptive Grand Slam?
Yeah, well, that was quite a long road. Really, the Grand Slam dream came about as a result of injury. I was injured serving in the Parachute Regiment in Afghanistan. Right. I got a shot in the chest whilst I was leading an attack on an enemy position, and that injury resulted in the paralysis of my right arm. Right. And rehabilitation is a long process, especially with nerve injury. Mm-hmm. Not quite sure of what you're going to get back, if anything. But because the limb's still there, my mindset was very much that, I'll get a full recovery. I've just got to work hard on the physical training and listen to the doctors and the clinicians and do as I'm told, basically, and I'll be back out serving again. Unfortunately, the part that I didn't listen to was the part where they said you've got a paralysed arm. So I kind of just threw myself into rehabilitation. I had to balance, really, because I had a period of 2 years where I had 13 operations under general anaesthetic. So every operation results in a period of rehabilitation, and you've got to get back on your feet again. You've got to try and get your fitness back, get your focus back. So I wasn't in a position really to sink my teeth into a new career or a full-time job. At that point, I was constantly in and out of hospital. So I wanted something just to stop myself from going stir crazy, basically. Sure. And I used sport as a focus during rehabilitation. And I used skiing. We established, a number of people got together and established a military disabled ski team, right, with the view to using sport as a focus in rehabilitation for injured veterans. And squaddies being squaddies, they learn in that structured environment quite quickly. They competed and had a desire to compete quite quickly. So we started to turn the skiing team into a racing team, competing against able-bodied soldiers on the Army Winter Sports Association's racing platform. The Army's got its own kind of winter sport racing agenda every year. So we competed in that. I got picked up for trials for Great Britain, went for them, got in, and then I went professional for 3 years, and that experience of competitiveness again, despite the injury, was what started getting me thinking, right, what else can be done? I plateaued with my skiing. I didn't have the talent. I got to world championship level. I was going for the Paralympics in Sochi, and really plateaued. I didn't have the talent level to be able to get to world number one. I was competing against people who'd been skiing since they were 5 and 6 years old and racing since they were teenagers full time. And I started racing at 26. So kind of did what we call in the military an estimate, which is a planning process that we use to come up with a solution to a problem. And I did an estimate on my life and said, right, what's the chances of why are you doing this? And the why was to win gold. And it wasn't going to happen. The competition were far beyond my talent level. The resources they had access to, we are a very recreational winter sporting nation state. I'd argue we're not a professional winter sport in nation state. We don't have the same resources and access to support that our competitors do. So I was spending a lot of my time trying to raise funds for the team just to try and keep us going. And whilst my competition was simply a cog in a machine, a very well-oiled machine at that. So I decided that I wasn't, I was going to be spending 4 years of my life basically trying to attain a goal that was unattainable. And during my time in that sport, I'd seen a lot of youth members coming through different Paralympic teams and different sports. And whilst some were really pushing themselves and achieving their aspirations, others were being held back, often from what I saw from people that were closest to them, friends and family.
Yes.
Wrapping up in cotton wool, which I kind of get. Ski racing is not the safest of sports in the world. But I was frustrated by that coming from a military background, especially in the Parachute Regiment, where we expect a lot of our people and we put them through a very robust selection and training program. And that creates a certain mindset, a robust mindset. And I was frustrated seeing people's aspirations not being fulfilled because of the attitudes of others around them. So I thought, right, the only way we're going to change that is by doing a few things that are going to change people's perceptions of what can be achieved with disability. And there were other people doing other things out there. And I thought, right, what's the big one? And the big one, from when you read into exploration and adventure, is the Explorers Grand Slam, the highest mountain on every continent in the world, and the North and South Poles unsupported.
And is that something that people regularly try? No, not regularly, but is it fairly common in those expedition circles to try and take on this challenge?
It's not common because there's a lot of challenges to it. Organisationally, time, training, financially, logistically. So it's not common. There are a number of people that have done it. I don't know what the stats are now. I think there's over 100 people now that have climbed the 7 summits, but there's not many people
in the whole world.
Yeah, there's not that many people that have done the 7 summits or the highest summit on each continent and both poles. And there's not many people. There's even fewer. There's literally a handful of people that have done both poles from continental edge of Antarctica and from the edge of the Arctic. Now, I've already done the North Pole from what we tried to do 3 degrees. And we're joined by His Royal Highness Prince Harry, raising money for a charity called Welcome to the Wounded in 2011, which was documented in a show called Harry's Arctic Heroes. But a lot of people in the space call an expedition in the Arctic or the Antarctic anything beyond 1 degree, whereas frankly, that's a glorified holiday. You can smash it in, depending on your fitness level and weather and conditions in a couple of days, or most go and do it in 5 days. And it's a robust holiday. So when we do the South Pole, we're looking to go from 732 miles, which is a proper expedition.
So which peaks? Can you explain to us which of the 7 peaks are included in the Adaptive Grand Slam?
Yeah, so again, this is an area of dispute. In Europe, there's an argument as to what's the highest, and it's down to what your perception of Europe is. So
right.
Going to do it in the purest manner, it's geographical Europe, in which case Elbrus is the highest. A lot of people think it's Mont Blanc.
And that's in Russia, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in Russia. It's right on the border with Georgia. And we've done that already. Africa is Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. We've done that. North America is Denali, or McKinley as it was known in the West. Denali is its
right, yes.
Its name, that's what people are referring to it again as now. We've completed that as well. Aconcagua is the highest in South America, which is in Argentina, in the Andes, and it's also actually the highest mountain out in the world outside of the Himalayas.
Oh, interesting.
And then Himalayas is Everest, which we attempted. So we've attempted Everest and Aconcagua already, and we returned back on both for different reasons. We're going back to Aconcagua in January 2017, and if I get the things I'm working on in place at the minute, then we'll look at another Everest summit attempt in 2018.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit further on, but before we do, how do you and your team members physically prepare for each challenge?
Yeah, so the physical preparation varies. And the reason it varies is because you've got to look at what the challenge is and what it is going to require of the team, both in terms of the technical skill sets and the physical demands. So the physical demands to climb Kilimanjaro are frankly not great.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got a reasonable sense of moderate fitness could get up Kilimanjaro. There's no technical demand on the mountain at all. It's literally a walk the whole way up a very well-established trekking route. The problem with Kilimanjaro is that because it's so easy and because it's so technically simple, you walk very quickly up it if you've got a reasonable level of fitness, and that can bring the onset of altitude sickness on because people are not allowing sufficient time to acclimatise, so that because the pace is too quick because the mountain's very easy to ascend.
And how high is Kilimanjaro?
It's just over 5,000 metres.
Okay.
So that's, which is more than enough for, AMS to kick in. So the preparation for that really is just some decent long walks. We'll kind of look at the end state of the expedition and what we think is going to be asked of us, and then we'll work back on a training program and a timeline around that. The physical demands of Denali, which is in Alaska, is significantly greater because you're unsupported. You're pulling all of your kit in a sledge behind you up to 14,000 foot. The Americans call it. They have different names for different camps, like 7 camp, 10 camp, 14 camp. And you're pulling a sledge up to 14 camp on that one. So there's a fair bit of kit in there. You've got all your food and fuel for the duration of the expedition, your emergency equipment, your camping equipment, your emergency communication equipment. So that kit can, weigh up to in excess of 70 kilos, depending on how long you're looking to plan on being on the mountain. The biggest challenge a lot of teams have on Denali is that they underestimate the weather and the time frame that you need to actually get acclimatized and then have a realistic summit window opportunity. People will go light and try and race up it and get there, and then suddenly they get hit with bad weather and they've run short of food and fuel. So when we went, we took enough food and fuel for a month just to be sure that we had a decent time frame. But of course, that means that you're carrying a lot of kit and it's heavy. But
you're probably, and with your fellow military team members, are probably quite used to such physical challenges. But you don't just take ex-service personnel, do you? This is obviously the Adaptive Grand Slam is for anyone with a disability. So how does the average person with a disability go up Mount McKinley?
Yes, it's acquisition of knowledge, frankly, and gaining experience, and we'll put a lot of that in place. So we run a selection program. We put a number of safeguarding measures in place. So whenever we do anything, people have to apply to come on the expeditions, and we will select those that are suitable to take on the endeavour. And it starts right at the beginning when we do our initial screening. We have a physiologist there, we have a performance psychologist there, we have a clinical psychologist, physiotherapist, strength and conditioning coach, and a doctor who has a high altitude diploma in mountain medicine, in addition to an IFMGA guide, which is a very high caliber of professional guiding qualification. And myself all sit on the screening process, and we'll look at someone's, in essence, their application form. We'll look at their injury. We'll look at how it impacts their ability to train. We've got to have a degree of realism with this. When I attempted Everest last in 2012, we had a triple amputee apply who had 2 legs missing above the knee, and he was adamant that he wanted to get to the summit, which I was very humbled by. But the reality is, on Everest in particular, until technology and exoskeletons improve further, it's the risks of taking an above knee amputee to the summit of Everest are too great. Kilimanjaro, you could do it with the right people, but Everest, it's out of the question. So we have that screening process in place, and we then start a physical selection program. And we start in the UK. We've done Yorkshire Dales in the past, Yorkshire Dales 3 Peaks. We've done Snowdonia, and this year, before the next Aconcagua training, we're going to the Brecon Beacons. And day one of that 2-day weekend is always a physical assessment. Nothing particularly demanding. It's just what are they like at our distance, because we have a fairly short time frame to prepare people for the expeditions. We're normally working on a 6 to 10 month window from the point of selecting a team to them going on an expedition.
Yeah, it's quite short.
It is quite short, yeah. So that we expect a certain baseline of fitness. Plus, the reality is, these treks, climbs, and expeditions are challenging. So they require a certain mindset and a degree of self motivation. And if someone arrives that is completely physically out of shape, that tells us a lot about either their ability because of their injury to get to a standard of fitness that's going to be required, or it tells us something about their motivation. So it's that's got to be, for all the safeguarding reasons, that's got to be quite a fairly ruthless process. And then we look at the technical demands. So we then go to Chamonix in September, and we conduct glacial training there. So we'll teach people how to use crampons, ice axes, how to work together on fixed rope and on a line with one another on harnesses, crevasse rescue drills, all the technical skills that are required to be able to safely move on a mountain.
And are these for people that have actually had no experience of doing such things at all whatsoever? Good grief.
So we'll take people literally from scratch who've never done any technical mountaineering before. We have, like I said, IFMGA guides there, and we've also got a small core team of disabled venture athletes that provide the continuity, myself included, that have got a good level of experience now in running these expeditions, that can support other people with disabilities. There's nothing better, in my opinion, than having an amputee teach an amputee how to adapt climbing techniques to facilitate a summit attempt with an amputation. So I've got a small team of people that we've worked with in the past who've done previous expeditions that come on those training weekends and training weeks, and also the expeditions themselves to provide that experience. Yeah,
and for you personally, with effectively having one arm, I'm right in thinking you're obviously your left arm is entirely paralysed.
Yeah, my right arm is paralysed. Yeah, so I can't use that in climbing. I have most of the time I sling it. So I see. Yeah, I just put the arm through a sling and it's attached to my rucksack. So there's in essence, there's a counterbalance issue there. So I have to work on the core stability, especially on some of the more technical mountains where you're crossing crevasses on ladders. And when we do Carson's Pyramid, which is the highest in Australasia, that's in West Papua, that's a diff rock climb. So we're going to have to really look into the technical aspects of how we climb and how we're going to adapt equipment and techniques, and what we're going to do to support one another to facilitate a summit attempt with the use of one arm.
Seriously impressive. So what attributes do you actually look for in prospective members of the Adaptive Grand Slam? If anyone's interested and thinks, I'd like to have a go, what do you actually look for in a person?
Yeah, a lot of it is around mindset. I've mentioned motivation already. They've got to be self-motivated. We'll put the tools in and we'll provide them with a support to be able to train, but we expect them to take the onus and responsibility of training themselves. Because we've got a limited amount of resources and we can only be together for short periods of time, that we focus on the technical training. So in the day-to-day, we expect them to conduct their own physical training. We're looking for people who are good team players. Everything we do is about teamwork. When you're in a hostile environment, teamwork becomes essential. Especially when you're dealing with people with disabilities. You've got to think outside the box on how you're going to operate and perform effectively as a team to mitigate the risks that your disabilities, in essence, present, because you're at a greater risk of frostbite. So with an amputation or with nerve damage, the circulation isn't what it once was. What it is in an able-bodied person, and that makes you at an increased risk of frostbite. So, for example, to put a one-armed bloke in charge of establishing a tent in -30, -40 with a 50-mile-an-hour wind, they can do it, but it's going to take them 5 or 6 times longer than someone with 2 arms. So it's essential that we have people who can accept that we work as a team, and despite the fact that they may have a lot of pride, they might want to do everything themselves. We look at what is the most efficient way of us collectively achieving our end state. So we look for that. We look for people who've got a good degree of mental robustness. I've worked with a lot of people with different disabilities in the past 7 years in different environments, supporting different charities, and I'd say that we are very much on the right of arc, if you like. We're not holding people's hand up these mountains. We are not having a 3-to-1 ratio of 3 guides and 1 disabled athlete trying to summit. We have, on everything we've done to date so far, we've had 1 or 2 qualified guides and multiple disabled athletes, and they are very much climbing the mountain themselves.
Have you ever encountered a team dynamic that didn't quite work?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we've before Everest, there was a couple of people that were selected that were wanting to be on that expedition, who've passed the initial phase, and certain character traits were presented through the training, and their behaviours and attitudes were not in line with that of our team. There were selfish character traits that were coming out in one or two people, and when they were tired and discomfort, under the degree of stress, and discomfort, they were not pulling in as a team. And that resulted that, despite the fact that one of them was actually technically by far the most capable climber in the team, and he was dropped from the team because he wasn't the right caliber of team player. And when you're operating in a hostile environment or a potentially dangerous environment, the team is essential. Up on Everest, you get above Camp 2, and there is no helicopter coming to get you out. There is no mountain rescue team coming to take you down. You are a self-contained unit, and as a team leader, you've got to have 100% confidence that any one of your team are going to be prepared to sacrifice their own summit attempt to come to the aid of a colleague should they need it.
And how did you actually, at the time, going back, how did you actually deal with the difficulties of some team members not being less than ideal?
Yeah, I think you've got to be open and honest, and you've got to create that atmosphere within the team right from the start. And you've got to create an atmosphere where people are comfortable talking about difficult things. And I always, whenever we have an issue like that, I'll always involve the team in any kind of planning process that we do. And I'll always ensure that they understand any issues that we've got with them, any issues that we've got with technical ability or lack of, they're not progressing in the training as much as they need to, or that there's a character trait there that's going to potentially be an issue, and an opportunity is there then for them to rectify it and to work on it. And then if it's not been done within a certain time frame, then the discussion will be had privately, one-to-one, not in front of others, where we'll say, look, this isn't working, and why. And to be fair, to date, in every single case to date, actually, I've never had someone that hasn't seen it coming and didn't understand what was happening and why. And people often do. The reality is, people know when the great thing about going to a challenging environment is that there's no easy way out of a situation. And when there's no easy way out of a situation, people's true colours come out, and you see them for who they are and what they are. And that can't be hidden. Yeah. That's one of the great things about, frankly, it's one of the great things about infantry training. It was one of the greatest things about the Parachute Regiment. You're frequently into environments where you are under stress and duress, and there's no hiding. And it's what I do with our teams in these environments that we go to. It's very similar. There's no easy way out of a challenging environment, and you see people in their true light.
And what's been the toughest challenge so far?
The toughest challenge for me so far, I think it's kind of dual. It wasn't on the Adaptive Grand Slam itself. It wasn't part of the sim. I did a jog in the desert called the Marathon des Sables a couple of years ago. Yeah. Which is the equivalent of 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. It's a very well organised event, and it's not like an unsupported expedition. You just kind of lock up, you raise your money to get there, and they put it all in place for you. And just go for a jog, and that was a cracker. But it was the challenge I had, and that was my with the arm being paralysed, the nerve injury is such that the limb doesn't sweat. So my core temperature was going through the roof, and I did it as a team with an ex-Bath team player called Dave Barnes, who was a cracker, ex-prop forward doing a flipping ultra-marathon series. That was quite entertaining. And a guy called Stu Doughty, who we were doing it to raise money for the Bath Foundation Restart, which is a rugby union's charity and Help for Heroes. Yep. Hence the three of us doing it. And I'm running with them two boys. We were in GSK. I've got like a human performance lab in Brentford, and we did a lot of environmental training in there beforehand. And we'd be running at the same pace in the same environment, and my core temperature would be up to 2 degrees hotter than theirs because of the lack of ability to regulate my temperature because of the nerve damage. So that was a challenge, because obviously with heat stroke and heat injuries, once you get into that space, it's very dangerous and it's very difficult to actually cool down. So that was constantly aware of that. And then I think, so that was a challenge on the injury side. But I think overall, before we attempted Everest, we attempted a mountain called Manaslu. There are 14 8,000 meter mountains in the world, all in the Himalayas. Okay. And before we attempted Everest, we wanted to take the team to another mountain that was over 8,000 meters, to build the competencies up, to build confidence, and to see who could actually acclimatize to over 8,000 meters. Because some people can't. You can have the fittest person in the world, and the physiological makeup will dictate whether or not they acclimatise to that altitude. There's things you can do to maximise your chances, but ultimately, it's out of your control to a great degree. So we went to Manaslu, and this was 6 months after we initiated the team selection and training program. So none of us had ever been on a mountain that was over 3,000 meters before. Right. And there's a world of difference between 3,000 and 1,163, which is what Manaslu is. And it meant crevasse crossing, and it meant learning to use Jumars and other technical equipment with the use of one arm. And so I think the learning curve on that was significant. And believe it or not, despite being a full member of the Parachute Regiment and scared of heights.
Sorry, you're scared of heights, did you say?
Yeah, I suffer from vertigo, yeah. So
No, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you join the paras. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, we do these things. So you've got to learn to control it and control the source of the fear. And that, with experience, can be done, and we do that frequently. But initially, because the flash to bang on that was so quick, I was having sleepless nights beforehand about crossing a crevasse and falling down, and how I was going to get out with one arm. But luckily, because of the preparation we've done and the training that we put in place, when we actually got to Everest, the one of the more dangerous aspects of that climb is through the Cumbre ice field, where there's multiple crevasse crossings, and I actually ended up finding that the most enjoyable part of the expedition. But back on Manaslu, because it was all new, and we had a limited amount of experience and time to prepare, mentally it was a real test of that one, and a lot of stress. But luckily we dealt with it, and the team did well, and we actually summited that mountain.
And talking of your mental strength, how much of that has been cultivated by you over time, and how much do you think you're actually born with such a tenacious, well and strong mind?
Yeah, I think I'm a firm believer that the vast majority, over 90%, if you were to try and put a metric on it, is cultivated and nurtured. Yes, people have certain genetic makeups. Yes, people have a certain character traits that they show very early on in life. But unless you are provided with an opportunity, or you push yourself in a certain manner that is going to provide you with the experience required to develop those soft skills, they will not develop. And for me, I've consistently throughout my life always, been part of organisations or attended selection programs for certain organisations that have always required the development of that skill, and it is a skill. And the more you experience it, the more you're capable of dealing with it the next time you find yourself in an arduous situation.
Yeah, it's the same as fear, isn't it? The more you actually confront fear, it diminishes in size, doesn't it?
Exactly. You just got to find a progressive nature in which to do it. If you try and go too far too soon, you're increasing the chance of failure. If you do it in a structured manner, it's far more conducive to success. And you've got to also respect and appreciate the fact that we all suffer, regardless of anyone's technical skill or natural talent ability, with skill fade over time. So you've got to constantly go back and revisit that training before in our case, the next challenge. And that's something that I remember distinctly in the Paras. The lads were some of the most robust and capable soldiers that there are in the world. But with that can come sometimes overconfidence, and you've got to
complacency.
Check every now and then with people and put measures in place to ensure that complacency doesn't creep in.
Yeah. And what one piece of advice would you give anyone listening who either is experiencing adversity or has experienced adversity in whatever form to increase their mental fortitude to get their life off the ropes?
Yeah, get out there and find organisations, find focus. However that's going to form, however that's going to come, get stuck into something. Nothing in this world comes to those that sit down and mope, frankly. We are very fortunate that we live in a free nation, and I've spent a lot of time in parts of the world where people don't have the opportunities that we have. We have genuinely been quoted many times in life that we've been born, we've won the lottery of life by being born an Englishman, and there's a lot of truth to that, in my opinion. Nothing will come to you, and you will not achieve anything if you don't take a proactive approach to making things happen. And there's no shortage of organisations and teams and fantastic endeavours that are being done by people in this country. You just got to go and find them, engage with them, and maximise your chance of being selected to join them by working hard.
And if people were particularly interested in the Adaptive Grand Slam, where would they go to find further information?
Yeah, the Adaptive Grand Slam has got a website, adaptivegrandSlam.com. There's a contact page on there. Just get in touch. And yeah, as you said, what we're trying to achieve is to facilitate world record attempts, world first events, and extreme challenges undertaken by anyone who's registered disabled. So yeah,
so how many challenges are left for that you're still looking for volunteers for?
Well, if this model works and it scales, it's going to be ongoing. It's not a case of I'm hoping to become to lead the first disabled team to summit the highest mountain on each continent, did both poles, but that's not the end of it. As far as I'm concerned, if this all works, that's the start of it. And I hope that through the project we can have teams of people being established every year, supported by able-bodied people. So part of the financial model for this is that we sell a limited number of places to able-bodied people that want to be part of it, and that helps finance the costs to the disabled team members, so they get granted the money required to undertake the endeavour.
Wow!
So there's no cost to them, and I'm just hoping that we have a twofold effect. One is we've consistently got powerful messages in this space to demonstrate what can be achieved with the right team and the right mindset, with a bit of support. At the same time, we are, this year we're taking on a few new team members, some of whom have recently received life-changing injuries, and they are in a difficult place right now. And I'm hoping that by being engaged with our team, we can provide them with elements of support and introductions to other organisations that can maximise their chances of making a success of life after a life-changing injury. So the physical endeavour is not the only thing this is about. It's about more than that. So I'm hoping it's got longevity and legacy to it. But it's very early days, and we've got a lot to do to make it happen.
So what's next for you?
Next for me is, so we start the selection for this for Aconcagua, which is in January 2017. So we've got the screening process in June. We've got the training selection weekend in the end of June, Chamonix in September, and then if Aconcagua is on track and all goes well, I think I've just secured a sponsorship deal to get the team to go and attempt Everest again in 2018.
What happened the first time you tried Everest?
Yeah, long story short is that we had the core temperature was so warm in 2012 that the frequency of avalanches coming down into the Cumberland ice field was very unpredictable. Normally you can expect them between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. In essence, the Cumberland was full of seracs, which is huge blocks of ice bolted onto the rock either side of a V-shaped valley. And the sun rises above the mountain range and hits the snow and ice. It expands, becomes less stable, and avalanches fall. So we mitigate that risk by travelling through the Cumberland ice field at night when it's colder. The risk obviously is that frostbite is then an issue because of the cold, but with decent skills and drills and preparation and modern climbing equipment and clothing, that risk could be mitigated. So we were going through at night, and despite travelling through at night when it was supposed to be cold, it was so warm that avalanches were coming down.
Good Lord.
At 1 a.m. as well, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And the risks of getting hit by an avalanche just became too great. So before we got right up to Lhotse Wall, which is basically the final acclimatisation phase before you go for the summit attempt of Everest, and we came back down to base camp, which you do on any high altitude mountain. You basically go up to a certain point. You'll spend a bit of time there, acclimatise. Yeah, you'll come back down. I don't tend to feel too good, which is always morale for my team because they enjoy watching me be sick and have a headache. When you come back down again, get some more supplies, head back up to that point. You normally feel better. You're faster, just because your body's physiologically adapting to the change in air pressure at that altitude, and you then punch further forward again. So you keep on doing that until you get to a point where you're acclimatised, ready for a summit attempt. You then come back down to base camp, have a bit of a rest, get some more supplies, and then you go for the summit. And we got to that point where we were going for the summit, and our lead guide called us in to our our planning tent and said the risks are simply too great now of someone getting killed. So he pulled the expedition, which was a difficult decision at the time for him, and a difficult one for all of us involved at the time. One that I had to really work hard on a personal level and with the team to support that decision, because everyone's perception of risk is different. But his lead Sherpa was a guy called Parachute, and Purpa has summited Everest 21 times to date. And Russell Bryce is the name of the chap who was making the decision on our behalf. Is a highly experienced mountaineer in this field, and when you've got SMEs with their experience giving you this advice, you're a bit of an idiot not to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you actually deal with the disappointment?
Really, for all of us to come together and think about the values of the organisation that we're supporting. What was this all about? The whole concept of this is that it's greater than any one individual. It's about something bigger than that. And for us, it was to try and raise money for the charity. It was to try and send out a message to other injured service veterans who were at an earlier point in their rehabilitation. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're dead down a crevasse because you've taken some ill advice and ignored good advice and carried on. So that's how we looked at it. And hindsight's a wonderful thing. He made that call and we pulled. Other teams carried on. Other teams pulled, and but ultimately 16 people were killed that season because of the avalanches.
Good grief. Wow, incredibly fortuitous that you stopped then. And similarly with Mount Aconcagua in Argentina, you had to abandon that too. What happened there?
Very different situation. So last year, you may have seen there was an El Nino last year, which is an event that occurs every couple of decades, has an impact on the air temperature on the Pacific, and that was one of the causes of the floods in Cumbria in the UK. But the impact it had in South America was that the winter was long, it was cold, and the wind speeds were significant. So although we went we were there at the beginning of the climbing season during spring, which is normally presents weather windows to summit, we got there and we had a very short weather window indeed before the weather was getting bad. It was bad when we arrived, and we had literally a 3-day window to try and get to the summit, which was a challenge in itself. Normally, that whole acclimatization process I talked about, we had to sacrifice. We had a very strong team. So we decided to go for the summit attempt early because it was the only weather window we were going to have. So we went from base camp on Aconcagua to Camp 1 to Camp 2 to Camp 3 to summit in 4 consecutive days, which is not the norm, even for a professional team. But luckily, the team was strong. We did it, and we got to within 400 meters of the summit. At which point you hit this little col, if you like, this little ridge line. And suddenly we were just hit with this, what we guessed was around the 75 km/h wind, and to the point where we couldn't stand up properly in it, and it wasn't gusting; it was consistent. And on summit day, you start early for a number of reasons, but the sun hadn't risen above the mountain yet, and it wasn't due to rise for another 2 hours at least above the mountain. So we were going to be in the shade in that kind of wind speed, and it was had we had carried on that. We had 3 cases of frost nip, which is the early stages of frostbite, which we'd identified. And if we carried on with that, people would have, got frostbite and amputations would have been happening. So we have to make the call. There's 2 things at a mountain that you've got no control over, and wind and avalanches are those 2 things. And, that's one of the attractions of these challenges, that you're in the laps of the gods. Nature dictates ultimately whether or not she's going to allow you to summit. You can put every measure in place there is. The strongest team in the world, but in wind speeds like that, you're not going anywhere. And if you do, you're probably not coming home.
Do you think you'd be attempting such endeavours if you hadn't experienced what you went through in Afghanistan? Yeah,
without doubt, what is required to serve in an organisation like the Parachute Regiment is similar to the character traits required to take on endeavours like these. You've got to have organisational skills, you've got to have the motivation to train, you've got to be able to develop the technical capability. All of that is similar to what we require from soldiers in elite organisations. However, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go and do this because I was in the military at the time. We were very busy, and I had not been injured, I'd still be in that role. People often ask me, you've gone on to do these things since you've been injured. Is your life better now that you've been injured? And frankly, I'm a bit of a realist, and the answer is no. I'd rather have the use of my right arm. I was very satisfied in my career. I had a great sense of purpose. I had a fantastic sense of identity in that role, and I wanted to continue. But I think what we're doing now is really trying to. Some people would argue it's to reinvent yourself. I'd argue that it's a lot of it is about self-respect and maintaining a sense of pride and refinding that sense of identity again after a significant injury. And if through that process we can support others who perhaps haven't had the same support that we've had. I was very fortunate when I got injured in that I was in the military. We had great support on the clinical side from the rehabilitation centre down at Headley Court. I had some fantastic surgical teams that worked on me to save my life. The long and short of it is I probably shouldn't be here. I was shot through the chest. I had arterial bleeding. I was bleeding out on desert floor. We're dead within 90 seconds of arterial bleeding, and I had it for 15 minutes. somehow one of us managed to put sufficient pressure on the artery to prevent me from bleeding out. And then I had, 2 surgical teams working for 10 hours straight to keep me alive with multiple blood transfusions. The long and short of it is I simply should not be here if you look at the stats on it and the chances of it. And I've got another opportunity to maximise, your potential in life. And when I got whacked, I came to thinking at the time, if I do go now, thanks to the career I've had, I've seen a lot of the world already at 26. I've achieved a lot that most people don't get the opportunity to do in a lifetime. And I've done something, and that was what I was thinking about, and my family when I was dying. And when I came to out of a coma, I was like, right, you've got another chance now, and life's precious and it can go and be taken from you at any moment. So made the most of it.
And how long following medical discharge did you start climbing mountains and setting world records?
Yeah, well, I actually started before medical discharge. I was still in the army when we got to the North Pole. So after I got injured, to be fair, the Parachute Regiment were very good to me. And because I was undergoing a lot of operations still, they wanted to keep me in to enable us to continue the access to the recovery. And we weren't sure still with nerve injury. You're not sure, what regeneration, if any, you're going to get, and if I would be able to continue to serve. So I stayed in for a few years, and I was still in whilst I was doing the skiing. And then, after medical discharge, in fact, it was during my time on the North Pole that I started thinking about, can we make this adaptive Grand Slam happen? And then I came back from the North Pole, and within 6 months of that, I then got medically discharged, and then this all kind of began.
So, do you think you've actually identified a meaning for the suffering that you've endured?
Yeah, without doubt, I now find a great sense of purpose in what I'm doing. We have a direct impact on the people that join the challenges with us, and that is very rewarding. And I think it's something that is scalable, and it's something that I'm passionate about and want to continue to push and drive forward.
Do you actually have a day job, Martin? Is there any time to do anything else?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm a partner in a training company, so when I left the army, I established a leadership and team development training business called Fieri, and we're very fortunate. I've got some cracking partners in that business who collectively run the business and develop it, and it's growing. It's doing well. And in essence, my challenge is one of prioritization and balance and time between developing the business and making sure that this project happens and is completed and is scaled. So I think the key to anything like that is just making sure you've got the right team around you. No one does anything on their own. Nothing of worth, nothing of significance. Even with all the resources in the world, you've got the right people. So what I've been working on since the moment I came up with this idea, I developed the business plan with a friend when I was on Everest in a tent at 5,000 meters for the business. Got back and set the business up, and immediately got people involved that I thought could help us do this together, because I couldn't do it on my own, and incentivize them sufficiently to get involved with it.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Just listening to you in this, I just think you've proved that no matter whether you're military or civilian, that disability is not an unsurmountable hurdle, and that adversity can be overcome. Thank you for inspiring us today. It's been fascinating hearing about your adventures. And if anyone's interested in finding out more, please visit the Adaptive Grand Slam website. The notes will actually be underneath this podcast on our website. And Martin, are you on Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, on both, and the Adaptive Grand Slam is on both as well. If you I think Adapt Grand Slam is the Twitter feed, and just type in Adaptive Grand Slam into the search engine on Facebook, and that will come up. And then I've got my own personal accounts there under my name as well. But yeah, don't want to follow me. I push on the project.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Victoria. All the best.
Cheers. And sincere thanks for listening. For all references and resources mentioned in today's episode, please visit the podcast page on offtheropes.com. Before you go, a small plea. We want to help as many people as possible discover their potential and overcome any adversity blocking their path. If you feel today's episode could inspire someone else, please share it via the social media icons on the Off the Ropes website. And if you're able to leave a review on iTunes, it'll help us enormously coax others off the ropes. And finally, if you'd like to receive weekly inspiring conversations drop into your inbox every Sunday, please subscribe to the Off the Ropes podcast via the website or via iTunes. Thanks again, wishing you an inspiring day.